are embedded within a general web app. In this case, the platform is built on top of a JVM, so this will be a JVM based web app. So let's open up, the standard web app that would wrap around uh, the demo that I'm going to show. Right. So this is, it's just your typical web application. It's already been created, so you can create new ones in here. So let's create this new view application. You go to new, you create an object. I mentioned object previously, so that's still the case. Say Beautify demo. Now we're going to look for the type that we actually want to associate with this object, which would be a Beautify. It's actually a view application. So let's open up the right kit. There are several versions here. You should always use the latest version. So let's use 1.2 and open up this framework folder and view application. That's the type of object that we're going to create. So you click here and it's going to create a view application. And you can open that up and it'll open it up. And we can then actually open up the actual object. And here, assuming it's finished rendering, actually do a quick check behind the scenes to see if it's done with the rendering. If we open this up, yes, it is done. So that's a view application. Now there's obviously nothing to see. Let's make this a bit more interesting. We're going to add a user interface object. And we're going to add within our user interface, since everything is driven by a schema, it's all guided. We'll add a Beautify application itself. Since Beautify as a framework, it has an app object, which is supposed to be the root object or root component for applications built in there. So we have that. And we can take a look to see what the result of adding these two things here. So as you can see, it renders the app component. Now let's add something actually more interesting. We'll add content. That's just going to be a wrapper for the components that we add. Now we'll add something actually interesting. I was ahead of myself. We'll open this up, look for a component that we want to add. We go to composition primitive. That's where they're currently stored. We'll add a toolbar as our application, our first interesting component. Right. You come back here. And once that's added, as you can see, it's here. It automatically updates. And here you have a Beautify toolbar. Let's add a footer. It's something that actually looks like an application can emerge. So we'll add a footer here. Go. And if you come back here, you'll see the footer here. Now, for Beautify, you usually have to provide some additional settings to make sure stuff get rendered properly. So since we want this to look like an application, we want the footer to position itself a certain way. So there is an attribute or property that facilitates that. It's called app. Again, all of this is schema driven, so turn that to true. And now you'll see the footer is going to be pulled down here, right? So that makes sense. We could even make it even more interesting. We could add, there's a color component here. Say we want our footer to be teal, which is one of the popular material design colors. So we'll add that. and it shows that here. So we have what looks like the skeleton of an application. We can open this toolbar again. Like I said, since everything is driven by a schema, it gives you a lot of help. So we're going to add the sidebar icon, which simply tells you that eventually this can have an event tied to it, so that it'll do things like pull drawers from the side. Let's do that. We can also add a title, and it'll show the title here. Let's say we'll call this, we can name this stuff. It's the title itself is an object, but we can rename it. Let's call it Beautify Demo, and we hit rename. It's gonna rename that, and rename would reflect it here. All right, so that's interesting. Um, we can make this a little bit more interesting by adding some additional, some interactivity basically. So let's open up the tool, the footer here. Now we're gonna add a button, right? Something that will actually show some activity. Right? So we have a button here. We want to make that slightly nicer. So open up the button, we add the settings object for the button that will give us access to the button's settings. So let's make this button a little small. That way it will fit into that toolbar. So that is right now, turn that to true. And as you can see, it's nicely. And we can do some other things. We can make it nicer, change the color from white to, say, indigo. Future things like colors will have helpers, controls that will basically just give you a palette to choose from. So that gives you the button. Now let's attach an event to that button. Again, everything is nicely based on a schema. There's nothing there yet. You can open that up, and there's a whole bunch of events that we've hooked in there for now. So we'll click this. It says, it gives you an event that says when clicked. All of those event labels, those are just things that we have, labels that we've chosen, right? You could actually rename these if you just want to call it click. One of the ideas or principles, design principles that we're going for is to try to make things look and sound as natural as possible instead of sounding too programmatic. So when you say things like when clicked, it sounds, more intuitive. Somebody comes in here, they can take one look at that, and it literally tells them uh, what it's going to happen. All right. So let's say, show alert as event action that we want. Like, all that's going to do is, it'll add another object here, which would actually allow us to inject some code into this stuff that we're doing. So let's make this JavaScript, right? And then we'll open this up. Say alert, showing alert, and I'm gonna hit save here. And once it's in,